Welcome back to the SPY Podcast, everyone. Newfoundland's #1 podcast. I'm your host, Robert Greeley, and today we have Mike Lynch on deck for you, one of the best, most well-known comedians in Newfoundland. We get into a whole chat that really discovers the behind the scenes of being somebody who, performs for a living and is also, a comedian, like I just said. So without further ado, we're going to get right into that conversation there now. This is the SPY Podcast, Newfoundland's #1 podcast. Enjoy. Mike, welcome to the SY Podcast. It's nice to, finally meet you virtually.
Yeah, it's nice to pretend we weren't talking before. Yeah, man, it's nice to meet you. I just, especially during lockdown, geez, I just want to talk to somebody. It sounds so freaking sad.
Well, you can't be giving away the secrets of the show. I mean, I got to let people think that this is the first time we're chatting this evening, right? And not the whole 5-minute debrief.
It's the whole mystique of your show.
Yeah. How's the lockdown been treating you?
Well, right now I'm in my office, which is also my bedroom and my parents' house. So, but it's been good. It's a big jump because I just moved back home from Alberta, right? Stuff was getting so sketchy. So, I moved out of my place, moved back home now with mom and dad. Me and my girlfriend broke up, which isn't sad, by the way. It's fine. I miss her, but you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like a big change in my life for sure. But I like that. I kind of like being out of my comfort zone. Used to being on the road, you kind of like big changes like that. I mean, obviously this sucks and I had to cancel a bunch of shows. It sucks for a lot of people. So don't get me wrong, this sucks, but I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine, man.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that because we always talk about Newfoundlanders going away for work, but I'm curious, with the pandemic, how many people have come back home? Because I'm in a similar boat. Obviously, I wasn't in Alberta, but I was living in Ottawa, and then, the pandemic hit. I went back, and it was, kind of getting rocky out there. So then an opportunity came home to work at in the province, which I just kind of, yeah, sure, which was not on my radar whatsoever.
Okay, so you're back home right now.
Yeah. So I'm back in Newfoundland. Yeah.
Right, and you were in Toronto, right?
Ottawa. Yeah, I'm studying at Ryerson University, which is obviously downtown Toronto.
Good. Yeah.
Doing my master's online, so that's been an experience. But yeah, I mean, I'm back in the island officially.
Right on. Fuck yeah.
So, did you grow up in town, St. John's? Is that where?
Yeah, I'm a townie. This is where I mean, before I moved to Alberta, this is my bedroom since day one.
Okay.
So, I mean, shit's going great, It's become a comedian, everybody. You could end up home at 28.
I was gonna ask, so what you're 28, what high school did you go to?
Holy Heart.
Holy Heart, okay.
What's your beef, man?
What's my beef? My beef is my last ever softball tournament, 4A provincials. Holy Heart put us out of the semifinals, so
that's right. Know your place, buddy.
No, for
what high school did you go to?
Claremont High. I'm from Claremont.
Okay, right on.
Well, fair. I guess I was born in town, right? So my parents moved out to Claremont when I was 2 years old, 2.5, something like that.
Okay.
So I
Claremont's home, basically.
Yeah, Claremont's been home. I mean, obviously I got no memory of living in town when I was 2, right? So lived in Claremont all my life before moving to post-secondary out in Ottawa, and then was out there for 4 and a little bit before the pandemic hit. And now, funny enough, I'm living in Bay Roberts, which is a bit of a change.
Really?
Yeah, that's where the studio's to, see? So.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, it's what I like about it the most, I guess, is it's right in the middle between town and, so you can go in and see some of the buddies. Well, before all this went to shits, and then you're also halfway to Claremont too, right? So it's not bad.
Yeah, Bay Robert's not too bad of a jaunt at all.
No, for sure. It's weird though, switching from a bay town to a bay town, right? You almost feel like you're cheating in a way.
Yeah, well, your parents went from St. John's to Clarenville, so you guys are doing some weird reverse.
I mean, so mom's from Grand Bank, dad's from Lewisport, so they went into town for, I guess, whatever little bit of university that they did,
Right.
and then I think how it goes more or less was mom started out working at like Scotiabank as a teller and whatnot. So, but dad, they met when they were both working at Sobeys. So dad was like a cashier slash like cart boy at Sobeys throughout like college, and then he got an opportunity to be a what are they? Oh, bakery manager. There we go. And I think
I
apparently the
want your
two
motor-sized manager. That was it.
yeah.
Like, look at that.
So it was I think the options were Clarenville or Corner Brook. So he chose Clarenville, I guess, or whatnot. And yeah, we it's funny because even as the Greeley name, a lot of people expect that like I'm from town as well, right? Or whatever that CBS area is, or wherever the Greeleys are too. But funny enough, my Greeley is actually like Lewisport, right? So that Gander area.
Yeah, that's the thing in Newfoundland. You tell somebody your last name, and it always leads to some weird disappointment or dead end in the conversation. Like, oh, your Lynch is from Paradise or up by Carbonear? And I'm just like, no, my Lynches are from around Bellevue. They're like, oh. And it's just like, just disappointment. Like, we can talk about something else. It's okay. Or
I
like, sorry?
No, I feel that it's you're always the big thing for me, and I don't know. I feel like you might have a little bit more of an accent, especially with your Cecil character. But a big disappointment for a lot of mainlanders with myself was, okay, you're from Newfoundland. Like, where's the accent? And I'd always be
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people with me, I mean, they see the Cecil character and they expect that I'm from the Bay. So my big disappointment is like, it's from Newfoundlanders. Like, so where are you from, by? And I just say town, and they're just like, oh, like you're not a real Newfie or what? It's like almost you got nowhere to fit in. Like you're not a mainlander, so like, oh, you're Newfie, cool. And then, oh, he's from Newfoundland, and then some Bayman talked to me and like, where are you from, by? And I'm just like St. John's, and I might as well have said you know, it's like it's like they relate more to mainlanders than townies. Gaming up away.
yeah, no, there's a bunch of those little things. I think one of my like favorites was every now and then I'd come across a mainlander who thought that they would know a whole bunch about like Newfoundland, so they get right excited. They're like, "Oh yeah, like where you from?" And I'd say Clarenville, and then they'd be like, "You kind of get disappointed because more or less what they were excited for were they were hoping you'd say St. John's because then they always go, "Oh, like so," because that's the
Like, do you
biggest
know this
thing.
person or that person?
Yeah, and then they go, okay, how close is that? Like, what proximity is that in the St. John's, right? I'm like, oh, 2 hours. So I basically just started saying like I was born in town, grew up in Clarenville, so that way you just give them a little bit of the excitement that they were hoping for.
Yeah, just I know. It's easy how people just run out of steam with a conversation. They have an idea of where they want this conversation to go, and if it don't go that way, they're out. Like we did a show in my buddy Brian Aylward, hilarious comedian. I don't know if you know him, but yeah, he lives in Bangkok, and he got me out to, like, I was gonna go visit him in Bangkok, and he got me a bunch of shows touring around Asia, like opening for him. And then we were in Malaysia, place Mary, Malaysia, and somehow friggin', we're in Malaysia, and 5 Newfoundlanders show up. And anyway, we were just there, just stood out in the crowd, got their hat on. Here it's like friggin' warm as fuck. And it's like, what are you at, boy? We came out show. La, 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 la. And I'm like, oh yes, Paul. Like, and I'm like, I started this topic of conversation like an idiot. I should know where it's gonna go. I was like, where are you from? Where are you guys from? And like, up around Bjorn or whatever. Like, where are you from? And I was like, St. John's. Like, oh, townie. And they never talked to us again the whole night.
Well, it's funny because there's like the only thing that's prouder than a Newfoundlander when they're open the mainland to talk about that they're from Newfoundland is a Bayman saying that they're a Bayman over a townie. I think that's the only thing where there's more
Yeah.
pride there.
Yeah, totally. They don't even St. John's they feel closer to mainlanders than people from St. John's.
So I'm curious now with the Cecil character, because obviously there's been so many things that, like, townies poke fun at Bayman, Bayman poke fun at townies, etc. And there's this like fabricated rivalry that we've portrayed. Do some people, once they find out that you're from town, do they take then Cecil in a new light where they're like, oh, this guy's just making fun of us Bayman?
Actually, the only person that was really spoke out against Cecil was my mom. I swear to God, before my mom, like when I was just screwing around with the character or whatever, just posting stuff. It's like, Michael, don't be at that. You're making fun of it's like, don't be making fun of people with something wrong with them. I'm like, I'm not making fun of someone with something wrong with them. Where'd you get that idea to? So mom thinks Cecil is me making fun of people with something wrong with them. I was like, and what's that something wrong? We all got something wrong with us.
So going back to the Holy Heart days and stuff like that, like, did you know that, comedy was going to be your thing, or maybe even before high school?
Like I was definitely the any interaction. I'm like, the goal was to make you laugh. I was the whole typical comedy story, right? You're the class clown and everything. So it was just that's what I was always doing. But no, I didn't really go with I didn't know I was going to go with comedy until someone pressured me to do it. And
Who was that someone?
actually really well, I mean, it's weird because this person didn't even really like know me that well, or like I think he did comedy. He was actually 70 years old. 70-year-old old man doing comedy at Yuck Yucks, and my buddy was doing comedy at a very young age, so he was getting me out to shows. So I was going out to shows, and I met this old man. His name is George Price. I met him through him, and it was a competition, and we were just quickly shooting the shit. I wasn't funny to him at all, and he was just like, but he was just a man who loved comedy. He's like, if you ever want to give comedy a try, we should meet up. We'll write some jokes and I'll give you a few pointers. And so I was just like, fuck yeah, like I'd like to try stand up. Like, sure. I never thought about it until he brought it up. So then we met up, and like, he was this old stoner fella. He was cool as fuck. I loved him. And it took me like 6 months to actually get the balls to actually do it. But then, I kept putting it off. And then he goes, you're up in 2 weeks. Like, he called in for me. So I had no choice but to do it. And I was just shitting my pants. So yeah, it's this old fella named George Price. He's dead now. But yeah, it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be at it, or I'd start super late and would have gotten nowhere with it.
So how old are you at this point when you're first starting off?
20, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm 28 now.
A little bit after high school. So I still want to fixate at that time, because when you're a class clown, is that getting you in trouble at all?
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I used to get sent out all the time because, I'm basically, people say, I'm the class clown, I'm the funny guy. But now that I'm in the role of comedian, like, look back, like I was just a fucking heckler of the teacher. Like, I was just derailing their shit all the pieces. So yeah, it definitely gets you in trouble. Like, some tolerate it more than others. Like, some teachers will welcome it, but some teachers like just had no fucking patience.
No, for sure. It's funny though, eh? You've now turned, well, you were what I guess would now be a comedian's worst nightmare, as a heckler, more or less.
Yeah, I was a heckler, yeah. And yeah, I mean, heckling too is not as, it's not as common as people think. Like, it's mostly people just trying to add to the bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or talk to you when it's not called for. They think they're getting in on it for the most part. Like a heckler to me is like someone who just tries to burn you while you're on stage. So you don't get too much of that.
Well, I think it's a hard dynamic, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, I would look at it and be like, buddy, you're sat here paying to watch me. Like that, I
Yeah.
think that would be my biggest thing. Like, I'd just be like, all right, like keep her going. At the end of the day, thanks for the check. Like
Yeah,
that's
or I'm just gonna, rip into you, one or the
mhm.
other. But the worst is the ones who really derail the show are drunk people. Now, this is just how it is. I don't know what it is, but drunk bachelorette parties are the fucking are usually always whatever category it is, and you gotta, and no matter what you give to them, it's just they keep on going, and it's just a nightmare, and they gotta get thrown out of the show. That's usually how it goes.
So when you get sent back down into detention and stuff like that, are you like sitting in those chairs thinking, man, like I'm funny, like screw you guys, like I'm gonna show these teachers one of these days or whatnot, or are you just like, man, like not again, mother's gonna kick me ass.
Right. um, what was I thinking? At the time, I would definitely I definitely wouldn't push the boundaries like too much. Like when I was younger, like you'd just be like, okay, and I'd take like a few week break, and then I'd start chiming in on the teacher shit again. And it was just for a laugh. Like it wasn't trying to like, oh, I'm gonna fuck her shit up. I wasn't like that bully of a student.
Mhm.
But when I saw an opportunity for a line, like, teachers basically to me was just someone feeding me setups to jokes. You know, like you ever watch Billy Madison and like that you see Billy Madison?
I think so. You're gonna have to remind me. I've been living in the sports world for a very long time, so that's consisted a
Okay,
lot of
so
my.
it's not, um, but yeah, Adam Sandler, like he goes back to high school and he's like,
Oh yes, there you go. You just clicked it with me. Yeah,
and the
yeah.
teacher's like the chemistry teacher's like saying like chlorophyll, and then Adam Sandler's like chlorophyll, more like borophyll, like, and he gets no laugh, but like, I guess what I'm trying to say is just seeing that setup opportunity and you just take advantage of it. But it was just me, like I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. This is gonna be awesome. But just I love my zingers. Just love a good zinger.
So when you're going through high school, I'm curious what courses are you fixated? Like what are some ones that like you really enjoyed?
Courses I enjoyed. Shit. Probably home ec because you're just like cooking with your buddies, and the teacher didn't give a fuck. Like the teacher would just have um that was like a weird safe haven for students. They like we all knew that we could just fuck off to Miss McLagan's room and she wouldn't say anything. Like people would just skip school, skip class and go to Miss McLagan's because she loved gossip. So she knew that more students, the more shit she'd be in on the know, and people would just get good grades because Miss McLagan just didn't give a shit. It was unreal. So that was my favorite class. But like actual courses I enjoyed, um, Earth Systems was was fun because we had a good teacher, Mr. Marsh, and it was a bit easier to understand than the other sciences, I would say.
So when you wrap up high school, what were your next steps there? Did you go to Mun or what'd you do after?
Oh, I wanted to be in film, so I do a scattered day as like a daily, which is
Mhm.
go in and either do I would do a lot of PA stuff. I'd volunteer on some short films and be a PA. So it's kind of like, you know, I mean, when volunteering as a PA, it was just like, fuck, I'm like, I didn't even feel like I was getting anywhere with film. But then I got on a few days doing like Republic of Doyle, like just helping out as an electric. So like the lighting, a couple days
Mhm.
on grip. And that's what I wanted to do. And this was kind of while I was dabbling at stand up. But then I wanted to be a power line technician. Then I wanted to be so yeah, I wanted to do film. then eventually I wanted to be a power line tech because I was just like, parents got in your head, oh, you got to get a normal job. And then I hurt my back, so I couldn't do power line tech. So then I did electrical engineering technology. And then after a month, I was like, man, I want to do comedy. Fuck this. And then had to break that news to my parents.
How'd they take that?
Oh, awful, because they're good parents. Your parents like, you're doing comedy? Great. Like that's a questionable parent.
Fair enough. When you're starting out in comedy and stuff like that, and I know you mentioned like Republic of Doyle, like you got to kind of see firsthand what was going on there. Who were you looking in terms of like a role model? Like what was that like, for me, like in this world and things, growing up in Newfoundland, I looked at obviously the athletes, but then there was guys like Bob Cole. I'm curious for the comedian standpoint, what was that for you?
Oh, as a man, I really liked, like the comedians I really liked. I wasn't really trying to. Man, that's a good question. I never really thought about this. There was no one really I was like trying to be like, oh, I want to be like that. Or there was one person I would like unintentionally try and rip. But when you watch a lot of someone, you like subconsciously try and be like them. There was times where I was kind of trying to be like Bill Burr, and I was just trying to just cut myself and knock that off. So I mean, no one really stands out, but I love Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's probably one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of headliners I would see come through Yuck St. Chaps probably inspire me a lot.
So those early days, I guess, when do you think that, hey, I got something here? Because I mean, I'm gonna say this. I think you're one of Newfoundland's most recognizable comedians. Because when I was in Ottawa, I would get tagged in like Cecil clips and or like Outhouse clips or even like your own comedy clips from other students who were going to the university, but they might be from like the GTA or Toronto, Calgary, wherever, and they just be like, "LOL, Robert, like look at this. This is what's going on out in Newfoundland, is it?"
Oh, crazy.
And so it's funny to me that I like your stuff has reached all the way to that point where peers of mine who have really no recollection or connection to Newfoundland besides being friends with me are like, "Hey, Robert, like check this out," kind of thing, right? So you've definitely, I would say, come a long way in that sense too.
Yeah, I'm super lucky. Like I gotta thank the Outhouse crowd for that, because they had their thing going and they kind of got me on board a little later. So, and I wasn't, I know I did post like, I did have one like the Cecil, I did make a Cecil that really got out there, but they kind of like took me under their wing from there. And Justin Hacko really showed me, how to keep your momentum, going through all this stuff, and helped me write scripts and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, I try not to think about it too often, like, because it just like kind of like, I would never try and let something like this go to my head, because I know how quick it can just like, okay, like there's a month went by and you haven't put out a video, like now no one gives a fuck about you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
It's as quick as it comes, it's very quick to leave, right? Especially in the social media age of things.
yeah, man, yeah, for sure. It's like you put out a little viral video, like everyone's attention span is like, think about, like that Bernie Sanders meme with the mittens, like everyone forgot about that already, but that
Mhm.
was the big trend joke thing, so
And what's crazy too is that particular thing lasted longer than normal like virality pieces go on the internet. Like that was around for a little while.
yeah, totally.
And we're still probably only talking about like 3-4 days max, maybe a week if we're really pushing it, that it was still kind of circulating where, businesses would come out with their like Bernie meme in themselves.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird, right? It's like, oh, now it's Bernie Sanders, now it's Tiger King, now it's,
Well,
this or that.
it's fun. I don't know how much time you've been spending on TikTok or whatnot, but all the TikTok trends, there's now a new trend, and it's like POV. It's the first lockdown, and it's like just some guy scrolling on his phone, and it's all the old trends and the sounds that were like just bombarded onto your phone, but you haven't heard in like the 11 months since this has all been on the go, because that was in that first period, right? You just mentioned Tiger King. Like nobody's talked about that documentary since the first start of everything.
Right. So that's the trend. It's like going back through, flicking through all the sounds.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's literally just, I mean, some of the trends on TikTok and the virality, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it's literally this guy. I've seen it a couple times now, and I mean, I'll say viral, but I haven't seen a lot of replications. I've probably seen 3 or 4 of these videos, but they all have like 1.2, 1.4 million likes. But it's essentially somebody just sat on their couch with their phone in their hand like this, and they're just scrolling, and it's just like you can hear all the sounds going on from like old TikTok trends and stuff like that. It's nuts.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. Like, I mean, what people are, what the young crowd is into now, like, even um, just watching reaction videos to watching just other people play video games. Like it's different, man.
It definitely is. The fact that major social media influencers in a way can have their main platform, for, and you know what, I'm sure too, like the Outhouse reacts, where you guys are just sat down watching and reacting to stuff like that, people would consume that now, which
I know.
is
I was
nice.
just chirping it, and I realized, like, oh fuck, we do reaction videos. Just total hypocrite here. What a bunch of losers, man.
Let's go back to the early days on stage. Do you remember your first show at all, or is that just,
Yeah,
did you just black out?
I definitely do. I remember waiting to get up on stage, and I remember getting feedback from somebody. To me, like when I got off, I thought I did really well. Like, or I can't, hold on now. Did I think I did really well, or was I kind of like disappointed? I remember I realized when I was up there, I'm like, oh shit, this is not as easy as I had in my head, because you map it out in your head. Okay, I'm gonna get a laugh here, because you watch stand up, so that the audio of stand up is in your head. Like, okay, about here they laugh, about after this time they'll laugh. Like, you plan the rhythm, but that's not how it goes. But a little trick that helps you, first of all, is yuck yuck. So there's a decent audience. It wasn't just like a shitty open mic crowd. And they introduce you as like, this guy's performing for his first time. Are we gonna make him feel welcome? So it's basically like when a little kid goes up on stage and does something, like, you're gonna be extra nice because, well, I don't want to hurt this little kid's feelings, So the crowd's working in your favor. The second time is when you really feel what it's like.
It's funny because when you're in front of people or you're behind a camera and you're portraying yourselves, it's interesting the different dynamics that you kind of mentioned in terms of like comedics, because I think of like in my own field, and having like hosted a few like TV shows and episodes like that, like I'm kind of in a studio by myself, so I don't really know how people are recepting it, because it's interesting how you're expecting laughs and moments like that, and then I think the drawback is sometimes I'm in my own head and I'm just like, man, like that, like I suck, like I am not good at this, and then
I
you
never
go
get laughs in here. What's going on?
and every now and then you're lucky enough to kind of bump into somebody and they'll be like, hey, I saw that, like you're really good, like good job, and like you're like, oh wow, like here I was for the past like 2 weeks thinking I was just terrible and I need to change professions and stuff like that. So it's interesting how, you almost get that instant gratification, but on the other hand too, it could turn very bad real quick because if they
Yeah.
don't like you, I'm sure you're the first person they let know.
Oh yeah, you know right away. You also get the instant, I hate myself tonight. Get the instant, I'm gonna cry myself to sleep. Yeah, it can sting, but you learn to kind of take you and you learn to like play it off. Like if you're eating shit, a joke's not working, you kind of learn to be in that moment, acknowledge it, or you just keep on rolling through with your bit. Like you don't have that awkward pause, like, like you don't just kind of wait for it to happen.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you kind of learn, and you got to be doing it a lot. Then because then you learn how to deal with it. Like another, if you have a bad show, then it's just another show. You'll get on the next one.
Yeah, that's been my biggest thing is more or less just trying to keep continuing putting things out there so that I just now, last episode was with Brent, who, is your manager. So now I put that out and then I immediately go to the next thing. So now I can just forget about how bad of a job I thought I did there and then
That's the
move on.
key. Yeah, that's the key. Well, it's Brent, so it's gonna suck no matter what. So don't worry about that. Uh, but you just keep exactly. That's exactly what you got to keep doing them. Like it's like videos. I'm kind of realizing now. Like I'm just gonna put out X amount of videos in this time, um, different kinds, and then if I fuck up one, it's not a big deal because there's gonna be another one coming out soon, or you got a big bank, or like you got a big bank of videos out there, and they're like, oh, this one sucks. Like, oh, but he got so many more that are good, so just
Mhm.
cancels it out, right?
Now, I'm curious with like, you just mentioned the video and the social media side of things because sometimes, and I'm guilty, but I'm almost self-aware in this sense where I try and not let the engagement with the likes and the comments and the shares or the views get to me, but in a way that's also an indication that you're doing things correctly, right? Because obviously if it's a good piece of content, more people are going to like it, more people are going to see it. I think what sucks and what we kind of get caught up with, and I mean, you can comment on it for yourself, is where it's social media, we sometimes forget the magnitude of the likes because there's just so many people on the platform. So it's like, oh, this video didn't do great for me. It only got 100 likes. But, pack 100 people into Yuck Yucks for a Friday night. And, that's a pretty good gig for yourself, right?
Yeah, 100 person audience is actually a fair size. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. You kind of lose track. You do forget that there's for each like or whatever, that's one person behind that like. So yeah, it's a good way to look at it for sure.
Do you remember the first joke that you told on stand up, like when you hopped on that Yuck Yuck stage for the first time?
Yeah, I do. It was about how easy I'd get boners as a youngster. Like I just like, fucking cat rub against my leg. I can't remember what else. But yeah, like I get a chub just by the cat rubbing against my leg or something like that. And just me talking to my dick, a good old fashioned dick joke. And it worked because I was really young looking and it was kind of cute at the time. So that was it.
There's got to be a certain sense of like self humility when you're kind of making jokes like that, where society kind of makes it awkward to talk about. It becomes a comedical joke when you go and address it like that. What was your key to basically just be okay with allowing that happen to you, like portray yourself like that?
I never took myself too seriously, right? Like I was never the type of person who had to like I never had to like praise myself up to feel good about myself, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
my guard was always kind of down anyway. I'm like, I'm not the cool guy, I'm not the tough guy, I'm not the athletic guy. My thing is kind of being funny. So I never starting off, I was never like, oh, I don't want to. I don't want to reveal that about myself. You know, I never really gave a shit. So that was good. That helps if you don't take yourself too seriously and you're just like, you know what, I get weird boners from my cat. Just talk about it. I have a sexy cat. Just let yourself be vulnerable. Like, and that's the most fun. It's most rewarding. Like once you just like, Boz, here it is.
When you don't get the reaction that you're hoping for on something, maybe it's just a different crowd and they're not as receptive to the joke. What are you doing to combat that, to make sure that you can still not have like 1, 2, 3 minute joke ruin the whole show or segment?
You say let a 2 or 3 minute joke ruin the whole segment?
Yeah, more or
Yeah,
less.
like within like, I mean, with between like 2 and 3 minutes, like, you know, you'd have a bunch of different, probably have like me and myself, like the way my style, I guess you call it, is, you know, I try and have a laugh, you know, every so often. So it wouldn't take that long anyway. It'll probably be just a tag or line.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it off, like, well, that wasn't supposed to be a joke anyway. So I'm just, you know, you talk over it. Like you don't have that pause. Like you feel it not working and you're like, oh, something else. Or you just like acknowledge it. It's like, well, that was fucking garbage. Like even if you say that, they're like, ha, yes, we know. They just acknowledge something in the moment. You learn how to just let loose up there, like you're just making the boss laugh, right?
So how much of your stuff in terms of the comedy would you say is more of a scripted, articulate joke, or on the other hand, it's just a funny story from living with like you and your buddies in a way? And like
I
going through
kind of
life.
I like to sit down and like really flesh it. I like to plan.
Mhm.
Everyone does it different. Everyone does stand up totally different, and everyone should do it different. No, you know, there's no one way to do it. Like I like to flesh it out. Sometimes it comes in different ways. Like sometimes I'll think of something just a bit before the show, and I end up keeping it. Sometimes I'll work like 2 months on a bit, and I end up having to throw it out. So it's weird. It's like you are really serving this weird muse going. You know, like weird how ideas just hit you or they don't.
Now, what was your big moment in terms of your stand-up career where it was like yes, like this is something I'm going to hold on to for a lifetime?
What point? Um, it's a good question. I thought I was supposed to be on video on trial one time by this comedian, and yeah, I used to open for him, and he offered me a spot on video on trial. I don't know if you remember that show. I don't know if you're
Vaguely.
right. It's kind of old. You know, it's mostly from way back, and like there was no big fans of it.
It was it on MTV or
Much Music.
Much? There we
Much
go.
Music
Yeah.
is not done anymore. And what's
Mm.
what's so fucked up about it? It's like I was a young comedian, right? And Much Music was like done at the time, but this guy was on video on trial, and I just, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to be on video on trial. And but that anyway, I don't want to get too far into that anyway, not just yet from this question, but when I got offered that and I had a couple good shows, I did like a show outside of Yuck Yucks.
Mm-hmm.
It did well, a lot of tickets sold, and I was just like, fuck yeah, this is what I want to do. But that would bounce up and down all the time. It wasn't until I was in a few videos, like did a few Cecil videos, and I went on my own little Newfoundland tour with Paul Warford. And we actually sold tickets from online traction. That's when I knew I was just like, holy shit, I can probably actually do this for a living. And then I went to Alberta to do comedy. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to get a job because I'm on the mainland now. I'm in the big leagues. But I was pretty far into the, you know, doing videos with the Outhouse at that point. And then me and Lisa Baker, another funny comedian, we put off our own show in Fort McMurray, and bunch of Newfies came out, and we're just like, holy fuck, like you can, there's Newfoundlanders everywhere. We can draw crowds with this. And that's when I realized, I'm like, shit, I might not. So I never had a job since 2016.
And because I was curious in the sense, like, a lot of your content is very strictly, I would say, your demographic is Newfoundlanders, but how do you try and incorporate, so like when you're doing shows in Alberta, because ideally you still want to draw in, I would assume, some different crowds and stuff like that, and not always have to rely on Newfoundlanders being the ones who show up?
Yeah, like so with with my stand-up comedy, I know not as much of it is out there, but I I have a lot of, like, most of my stuff is pretty fairly universal, or can be relatable. And a lot of my Newfoundland stuff too is stuff where you just have to be aware of Newfoundland when it comes to my stand-up comedy. But yeah, my sketches and stuff are mostly directed towards the Newfoundland demographic, which is, you kind of get in your head like, fuck, I'm just fucking, and that's where you humble yourself, right? It's like, I'm just a Newfoundland comedian. Like, this is not a big deal. This is easy shit. But I love it. So, and it's just what I grew up around. So I mean, you do comedy based on your surroundings. And I grew up in Newfoundland. It's kind of hard not to make fun of what we've been exposed to, the characters in our life. So how do I not?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you almost want to stay true to yourself at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. You try to stay true to yourself. And like when you're doing this, you feel like you're trying to find yourself too. You're exploring your voice. You're like, what? Like, what am I? Because when you start off, you're always trying to be somebody else. Like, even at this point, you feel like you're faking it in some way. So you're always trying to explore your voice and find out what your true voice is.
So now I'm curious, you mentioned how your parents were kind of a little bit skeptical on the comedy career since, the video on trial and the successful shows and things like that. Have they come around since? Are they
Oh
big fans
yeah,
now?
they're unbelievably supportive. It just took them. Then they realized, once they realized, like, okay, Mike's doing this regardless, so they want to be supportive. And then, Dad was supportive, like, a few days time. He was even give me little advice and nudges and little pep talks and everything. But Mom, like, even even almost till now, like, Mom will put the Kona was it course guide in my face, like, well, it'd be nice to have a backup. I'm like, Mama, it's too late for that now. Yeah.
When you're writing a sketch with like the Cecil character or anything like that, and you're building a routine, say, for stand up, is there a difference in the creative process there?
Sketch and stand up? Yeah, for sure. Because with sketch, in my opinion, is a lot easier because you have so many crutches. You have so much to play off. You have other characters to play off. You can incorporate props, locations, editing could make it funny. With stand up, is just raw. Like, you be funny, buddy. You got nothing. This is live. Go. You got nothing to work off of. Just you're creating the setups, you're painting the scenario. You got to make people get into it. I think it's just a lot harder.
And so I guess, how did Cecil first form? Because I know we've been chatting about him for a while, and now I kind of want to fixate on the character Cecil O'Brien. When did he really come to fruition?
Well, if you ask my mom, I ran into someone with something wrong with him and just started impersonating him. No, Cecil's based off of he's probably a mix of like three people in my life.
Okay.
Just growing up, spent a lot of time around the Bay because all my family's from around the Bay, so spent a lot of time Long Harbor and around Southern Harbor, and just seeing just like a shit mix of Baymen that I've seen over the years, and it kind of just a little bit in my head too. And I just break them out at parties, just fucking around with the bars, and I always get a laugh. And where it really kind of where it really kind of started is at Yuck Yucks. It was after I was doing stand up. So I was doing stand up, and one of the managers said that, or the fellow was supposed. We had a bunch of mainlanders come in, and the fellow who was supposed to screech him in couldn't make it, so he asked me to do it. So I was just gonna go up and screech him in, but then I ended up putting on like some hat that was in the coat check, and an old plaid jacket I had there, and I just decided to do this character, and I was just kind of riffing, and in a way it was bittersweet because it was killing, but I didn't prepare, and it went over better than any of my stand up. I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, I work so hard on my stand up, and this is killing way harder. But yeah, that's kind of, ever since then I was like, yeah, I guess I gotta keep doing some shit with this.
It's funny you say that because I feel that on a whole other level. There will be times where I'll put weeks into, coming out with some form of like, short story or like documentary that's like a 9 minute or 15-minute thing that, will go on YouTube and it'll do well. And then all of a sudden I'll go down and hang out with my grandfather for a couple of days and just slap that together and it'll blow that out of the water immensely. Now, who knows? Maybe grandfather is just more popular and likable than what I am, but I get what you're saying there.
Always, all of our parents are.
Yeah,
way funnier.
Now, when you start establishing Cecil as a part of your routine, and I think up until, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but until like recent years, I think more people are now recognizing the separation between like Cecil and the comedian Mike. But I think there was a part in time where maybe Cecil was so well known throughout the province.
Yeah, like people didn't even know who the fuck I was. Like people were coming to my shows and like this fucking I got this massive. I'm not gonna break it out because it's just too. But like the first sketch and stand-up show I had, like it'll show my characters like Randy Lee, Cecil O'Brien, and there'd be like Mike Lynch, and people will literally come and be like, "Oh, I know it's them two, but who's Mike Lynch? Who's that fella?" I'm like, "It's me. It's who you're paying to see. Thanks for your money." The fella getting all your money.
So, at that time, are you like struggling internally at all where maybe it's like kind of like a imposter syndrome where it's like, oh man, like people only like me for this character, or is it just something that you embrace that like in a way Cecil does live inside of you?
Yeah, like I did for a while, but I think I grew more to accept it. Like it's still a bit like you're on the mainland, you see like all these funny stand-ups and you feel like some are funnier than you, and you see them kind of like having a rough go selling shows, and here you are doing well, and you're like, oh fuck, if I never had these characters, I'd be a struggling stand-up too or whatever. But I always try and make a point to put out a lot of different stuff and keep a nice balance, and also attach my name to make sure people know, I have a real name other than Cecil,
Mm-hmm. Now, with everything that you've kind of created, did the Outhouse come up before Cecil was a thing, or did it go kind of hand in hand?
No, yeah, the outhouse was definitely a thing before Cecil
Mm-hmm.
was known. Like Cecil was a character I was basically doing since like 2014, like, amongst the bars. He never had a name. It was just something I did.
Mm-hmm.
Same with my ski character, but yeah, the outhouse was definitely more established. It was established before Cecil was. Absolutely.
So when you start, like, take me through those early days of when you start integrating with the Outhouse and working with those guys.
Well, Justin Hacko started something called Newfoundland Versus. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he started a YouTube channel of him and his buddy Murph, and I still love it to this day. Just them, they just developed these two characters that used to, that was like those were the first real. I mean, I guess there was Donnie Dumphy, but then there was this, but like they went viral, and like every month people would look forward to them, and they were so popular in and around Newfoundland. And yeah, Hako just kept the videos. He kept the momentum going from that, and eventually the Outhouse got started. So it was like him and Marcus Rose, and they were putting out funny videos. And someone heard, I guess we had mutual friends, I can't even remember who it was, but told Hako that I do a good skeet impression. So he had me in on a video, and I guess went well. He liked working with me and stuff, so he kept having me on more, and we kept fucking around. I was very lucky. Like, he was just looking for someone to collab with, and we just kept her going and trying new stuff, obviously. And it was just like first, like, oh shit, like this is a lot of people are actually seeing what we do here. It's pretty fun, because I used to put out a fair bit of videos on Instagram, and it get fuck all traction, but it was just me just completely fucking around, being put no effort into it. But yeah, it was cool.
I'm curious because I think, the Outhouse and, Newfoundland versus, it definitely blossomed into something that I would assume is definitely exceeded monetization aspects. As from the sense that I'm getting, you guys were just kind of having fun. Now all of a sudden, you got your beer with Kitty Vitty, the merch line. Obviously there's monetization in terms of the platforms where you're putting these things on with YouTube potentially. Sometimes when you have a lot of egos and conflicting personalities or stuff like that, when money gets integrated into those things, that's almost when you see things fall apart, and people kind of get into arguments. But I mean, I could be wrong, but that really hasn't happened with you guys. What do you think is a testament to that?
I think it's just like, if you're all we're all pretty like humble people, and we're kind of friends, and we care about each other and stuff like that, and just want to see each other do good and everything like that. And obviously you do have conflicts. Like, you did disagree on a lot of things, like because everyone doesn't see eye to eye when it comes to business. Like, you got 4 people in on something, you're not going to see eye to eye with every decision, which is normal. But I think you just gotta just not take it personally. Like, we're all just trying to share ideas and move this thing along. We just want to see the whole thing do good. I think it's just sit down, just have the best intentions for each other, and not take yourself so seriously. Lay it all out. Communication is key for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so, in terms of managing this pandemic as a comedian, obviously the industry doesn't really work for the current climate. Pack everybody in and do a show. So throughout this time, how have you been navigating that? I know fortunate enough to be in Newfoundland where you could do some shows for a little while, and you were actually on tour before things switched up.
Yeah, I was in the middle of a tour. So it's been really hard on artists and people who perform live shows. It's been really crazy time. My first step was move back home into mom and dad's. But you're just planning for the next thing. Like, it's we're gonna come out of it eventually, I'd imagine. So you just plan for the next thing. You kind of wish you saved a bit more money, but yeah, you just hope that it's all gonna be fine, and you focus more on the online stuff. Like, a lot of people are doing virtual shows, which is fucking gotta be a headache, but just focusing more on sketches and stuff now.
Mm-hmm. So of late, one of the most recent sketches from the Outhouse and you guys have been like Cecil's tips to surviving the lockdown. Now, here's the thing, as much of comedy goes into that, at the end of the day, you actually are kind of doing an important job because you have been gifted this amount of influence and people are watching that and being like, I can guarantee you there's somebody watching that being like, oh, well, like if Cecil says stay 6 feet, I might as well stay 6 feet and wear my mask kind of thing. How do you deal with that power essentially?
Dude, we don't even think about it.
Hmm.
Which is kind of, it's trippy to think about. It's like, damn, it's like, God, it's like, yeah, it's a good idea to be safe during all this, but if I said something completely stupid, which, I'm just a comedian, like I'm not a health professional or anything like that. It's like, it's just crazy to think of that I have that power and that, people are influenced, but that's great. Like if I can send a positive message into something, that's totally awesome. But I also hope that people would, I don't know, if I were to say something stupid, like heat of the moment, I would hope that people would still think twice about something, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
for sure.
I don't like the idea of having that power. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where when it's used in good terms, like the unfortunate thing is if that video that you guys had posted had been a complete opposite where, hey, screw this lockdown, screw the regulations, let's live our lives, this is ridiculous, there would be a lot of your supporters being like, yeah, hey, Mike Lynch, Cecil O'Brien, these guys don't mess around with this. Neither am
We're
I,
like
right?
the cool kid. We're like the cool kids in school.
Has that sunk in at all?
No, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of giant babies fucking around. Like, so we don't like to think about it. But it's yeah, like I try and take as much. I don't like to think about. Like obviously, I appreciate all the feedback. I love it and stuff, but I don't like to think about. I always try and shun out how many people are watching us or fans and stuff. It just keeps you kind of level-headed, and you don't put so much pressure on your next project. This has to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You can focus better on just fine.
Now, I'm curious because I think from what I've seen in the sports world of things, there are no fans like a Newfoundlander fan. I mean, I've seen and heard stories where it's crazy. I mean, I had Dustin Russell, who longtime captain of the Claremont Caribous out in senior hockey on my other podcast, and we were chatting and about some of the fan requests, and he's getting calls to go to birthday parties, his faces is on cakes and stuff like that. And like for senior hockey, you're not seeing that anywhere else for the most part, other than Newfoundland. I'm curious, in terms of the comedian aspect, what are some of the, crazy fan interactions that you've had?
Well, I realize I'm not good enough to be on a cake yet. That's bullshit. When am I going to get a cake?
My birthday's coming up October 14th. I'll get a cake with your face on it for you.
You better. I'll be checking in. I want some piece too.
All right.
But yeah, like it's cool. Like there'd be kids dressing up as Cecil for Halloween, and I think that we're like Newfoundland's so unique too. Like our culture is so different, and like you're on the mainland, you really want to relate to something. It just hits a lot harder, and so I think as a comedian, I'm super lucky to be a Newfoundlander and be able to tap into all this humor, like sort of based off our culture and characters you'll see on the island. I think really did wonders for us, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. When do you remember the first kid to dress up on Cecil like that for Halloween? Do you have a
I do, yeah. I do. Yeah, that was trippy. That was in I think it was 2016. It was just it was this little kid around the bed. It was actually a little girl, and she like sent me a picture. I'm just like, oh, like holy shit. And Yeah, that was kind of trippy. And I was just like, oh, it's just, it's one. It didn't really. But then the next year, it was like a bunch of kids. And then I was on the mainland at the time. And then, like all the comedians, like, no one in around the comedy scene knew or kind of give a fuck about, the online hype or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple comedians saw it and they're like, you have kids dress up every you as Halloween? They're like, that's so fucked.
It's definitely pretty cool. I must say, when you're going through the motions, and obviously we talked about some of the positive stuff, for better or for worse though, I mean, if people aren't liking what you're doing, they're going to let you know. How have you kind of handled some of the negative comments, and has there been any in particular that, like, really stick out even to this day?
I didn't even know there was negative comments until now. Thanks, man.
You know what? I was just speculating.
I read them all.
Yeah.
I've seen a few. I used to have a guy message me all the time saying I was making Newfoundlanders look bad and fuck you, you piece of shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and get pretty vicious. Like, oh, I hate this guy, or like, I hate these guys. Just, they can be vicious. But you do have to. It's just all part of it. Like, you just take it with a grain of salt, and you don't take it personally. You just keep in mind, if it's a bunch of negative comments, you're like, okay, maybe this video kind of sucked. I'll just keep that in mind. At least I tried something new. But you got to go for it. You can't be too scared, because if you're too careful before you put some content out, you might not run into something new. Like, for example, like Cecil one time was a risky thing. Like, not risky in terms of edgy, but like, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna be anything. But if I had overthought it, like, oh, maybe I should just do what's works all the time, or what everyone else is doing, then you won't run into, you'll miss out on another weapon for your craft,
No, 100%. I mean, it's inevitable. You could do something perfect and you're still going to get people who aren't happy with it at the end of the day, right? It just kind of goes hand in hand with the environment of the job.
Yeah, and like, what kind of strange comedy is out there that everybody likes? Like, what kind of weird comedy, what would that even look like? Comedy that everybody likes.
Yeah, I have no idea, to be honest. I'm curious though, because we're kind of getting into that theme. Your industry in comedy has probably been ridiculed constantly throughout the last couple of years in terms of, like, finding, I guess, that fine line to being an asshole, being rude, not being sensitive to anything, and then, being funny, right? Like, it's this imaginary line in the sand that's, really blurred, and a lot of people have been kind of struggling to find that line. How have you been handling that?
I mean, luckily I haven't, put out anything to ruffle too many feathers. I mean, there's some shit I think about. I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have put that out there. Like, everyone's conversation with their buddies, is totally different from what they'd want to have everyone perceive them as, in a public eye. So ideally the goal is to make most people like something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess your goal is not to divide, but like, I mean, me personally, I also like edgy humor, that some people would consider disgusting or whatever. But to me, like, I don't get offended by any jokes, but that's just me personally. But I think it's also like, you can't really say like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to feel that way. Like, these are only jokes, but also it's just like, it gets to a point where, people are trying to like take someone down, like they shouldn't work anymore, call the venue, tell them down. Like, I think that's I think that's absolutely. I think that's way more gross than someone just making a joke about something that's and it's getting really particular now, like cancel or like with some political correctness, like you can pick everything apart to death. Like some of it's just absolute nonsense, but it's also like, okay, was I trying to be an asshole? Was it like, as a comedian, you gotta be like, okay, was I really being an asshole here? I don't think you got to learn how to move on too. You got to just understand people trying to take you down. Not everybody's gonna be on board with the shit you're saying, and sometimes you just got to let them run out of steam and just keep moving on and take everything with a grain of salt. I don't know if I just rambled nonsense there.
No, you definitely made a good point. I think the biggest thing too is context is everything, right? And it's really important to kind of take that into consideration with each and every situation, right? Because like you said, and I think it's a really good point that you made there. You can't control how other people are feeling, and for the most part you shouldn't even really argue with the fact of somebody's feelings, because
Yeah.
that's an individual, and how they want to feel and respond to something is totally their own right, and they have every reason to feel that way. You can't tell them otherwise at the end of the day, right? So I think like
Yeah.
that's a valid point, and then obviously context is key in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, like you can't be like, oh, you're not supposed to feel that way. But at the same time, it's like, okay, also don't expect every comedian to cater to your feelings. You know what I mean? Like sometimes going into a comedy show, for example, like sometimes that's a bit of a risk. But now, like, if you're a comedian, you also want to make, I guess, most people laugh. Like you're always going to upset somebody.
Mhm.
So you just find your balance and try to make, I don't know. I think I'm just rambling. I think I just bet it to death.
We'll I want to go back and look at more of the fond moments, the Outhouse sketches that you guys have done. And I mean, some of these videos, hundreds of thousands of views, like really took off. Do you remember the first kind of virality?
Well, the
Whatever.
different way of saying it.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes here's a
On the
little,
Facebook.
yeah, another secret to hosting. Sometimes I just try and say the different phrases and words to make it sound more, educated or edumacated, as they say, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like
On
grandfather
the
says.
Facebook.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I should probably just go with words that I can actually pronounce correctly. So,
Well, fuck that. You gotta have a thing. You gotta have your thing, man.
yeah, but no, I'm curious. The first viral moment that really took you guys to like, wow, like this is cool.
Well, the first viral moment I had, I made the first Cecil video. It was a
Mhm.
request to Screech and Selena Gomez. And it was like,
I remember seeing this. Like,
yeah,
you're hitting on an old. You guys put that out like 5 years ago, probably. I'd say.
yeah, it's 5 years, about almost 5 years ago now.
I remember watching that video in Claremont High School, like sat down like with my buddies and whatnot, and it was just kind of like, look what just came out. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, that's when I just posted on my normal profile, right? And now I'm just like, oh shit, a bunch of shares and stuff. And I'm like, man, I remember I was kind of like, shit, if I actually screech in Selena Gomez, like, I'm gonna fuck that up. I don't know if I want all that pressure.
Man, it's a lot of pressure to screech somebody in. I've had that like kind of mentioned to me, because obviously I got buddies who have never been to Newfoundland and they want to come, and they're just like, oh yeah, so like you'll screech us in, and I'm like, well, typically it goes to the most. It's weird. It's like the most Newfoundlander is the guy who's supposed to be the designated screecher inner or whatever the term is.
Uh, I know all I know is that there's people who do screechings and they'll just sort of amp up their newfie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they all do the screeching. Like, so you probably call it, if it's in Claremont, and you probably hit up someone in Shamrock City or wherever the fucking bar is. And Yeah, there's like certain people who do it. So did you have to screech them in?
No, well, I mean, so more or less, like these were like we were gonna do a grad trip, right, for a few different things, and a couple of my like good friends from Ottawa were gonna come down like the summer and all that fun stuff. But obviously, COVID's kind of put a pause to all that and whatnot. So no, man, I don't think I'd want that pressure though. I think I just kind of want to enjoy it. The funniest thing actually, so after I told one of my buddies what the whole screeching ceremony was, he goes, "So like you guys do this all the time, where like you kiss a fish and you drink the screech and whatnot?" I'm like, "No, not at all. Like that shit's gross. Like we're not at that. Like that's just for you."
Yeah, no, they're like, what the fuck? They're like, wait, you guys don't do this shit either? I was like, no. Like, why would we do that? But no,
But
like if we were doing that all the time, maybe we should. Maybe we owe it to them.
I mean, I don't. I was gonna agree, but I really don't want to be kissing a fish and take a screech every time I had to go out. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have me pockets filled with cash or cab money home as opposed to a cod's head.
I'd rather just kiss a fish for nothing.
Yeah.
'Cause it's been a lonely quarantine. I actually chugged a beer uh through a codfish. We didn't release this yet, but we did a scavenger hunt, and one of the I think one of the challenges was kiss a fish, and one was chug a beer. So I got mine all into one. So one of the guys poured like the beer through its gills, and I chugged the beer through the fish's lips, and it was like a frozen fish. So I don't know what the fuck why, but the beer was just like super smooth. Like I don't know, it was just because it was just traveling down this cold codfish. But I remember it wasn't so bad. I was like, this is not so bad. But it looks super cool on camera. Like it's gonna got extra points for that.
Oh my. I'm at loss for words right now. Going back,
Yeah.
going back to the Selena Gomez screeching, when that like really started picking up, like were there talks with Gomez's management or anything like that?
Well, she kept trying to hit my DMs, but I just didn't have the time to deal with her.
Fair enough.
Just like fuck off, Selena. Not right now. Um, no, man, there was none. She actually canceled the concert because apparently
Oh,
she
yeah.
was now she was on this tour, and I think she only canceled Newfoundland, and it said because her apparently her it's just rumor on her depression was acting up, which is a serious problem. But
Mhm.
there was also like rumors that I scared her off. So I
Now
remember Cape
that's
Shore. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's got to be like a ridiculous statement that you scared off Selena Gomez from completing her tour, but I'm sure some people really fired that one at you.
Yeah, but it wasn't even so much like, oh fuck you, Mike Lynch. It was I remember Cape Shore memes or something posted a video, um, something like, "Hey Selena, come get screeched in," and she's like, "What's a screech in?" And then it showed like my face or something, and then she went back to her, and it was like, "Shag that," and she just didn't. So I don't know, man. I was getting in my head. I was like, man, maybe she stumbled upon the video, and just like, geez, I think they're all cracked over there.
Now going more and more of the Outhouse's sketches, and you guys have really done a pretty good job at monetizing it. Like I mentioned before, how did those ideas kind of resonate in the terms of merchandising with like t-shirts and your beer with Kitty Vitty and whatnot?
I think it was a long time coming, really. Like we went a long time without selling anything, which was kind of as we were going along. I was like, this is crazy. Like we still haven't tried to sell any merch. I think we sold a little bit of merch at shows, like a little tiny bit. So we got a tiny little taste of it. And then it was kind of like a no brainer. We were like a year planning before we sold anything, just because, you know, it's just me, Hako, Marcus, and then later came in our buddy John Pike, who's really talented at, like, you know, design and filming and stuff. So I think it was just because we're just originally buddies, doing it for fun. We're not really thinking of the business side of it until later, and then business side of it came in. We're like, oh fuck, we just got to take advantage of this. So it's just a no-brainer, right? Just like, okay, there's all these eyes on this video, we could sell some stuff. We had to do it. Was just no-brainer.
Well, in my opinion, I think that's the better way to go about it, because I find you guys realistically, in a way, and I'm sure you'll admit that like your stuff's not perfect, but you know, you perfected your craft before you really tried to like make any tangible, you know, products out of it. Like you wanted to spend and fixate the most time on what was for you guys the most valuable aspect of it, which was your comedy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you're just focusing on the art and not the money allows you to really get to a certain point. If you think on, if you got money on your mind, and or like trying to get famous or something, if that's your primary focus from the beginning, when you even haven't got your full potential yet, I can't imagine you're going to grow, because that's just always going to be on your mind. So this kind of just came in later, luckily, for sure.
Now I'm curious about your opinion on this. So with the age and rise that was kind of TikTok, in a way, Newfoundlanders saw more, what I would say, you know, people who grew a social media platform and almost more social stars in a sense over that period and growth of the platform than ever before, because you know, realistically, all I kind of can remember with, like, you know, early on with like Facebook and YouTube were, you know, guys like yourself and the Outhouse and those kind of sketches. But now there's almost like a plethora of Newfoundlanders who are doing social media now because of the virality. Man, see, I just got to cut that word out.
Virality, that's a tough one.
With TikTok. So I'm curious, when you're seeing that happening, what's your thought process? Because I know you're not big on that platform right now. Like you haven't, I think you've posted like 6 clips there. Like it's not really one of your main focuses.
No, I'm just kind of coming in a little late to the game, because there's always something new going on, right? When TikTok came out, I'm like, fuck, is this going to be another thing I got to get? I gotta try and do more with it, because I just want to cover all ends of it, right? I don't want to have to be another thing. I'll probably just post what I have put on Instagram on my TikTok, rather than, oh, this is exclusive Instagram material and exclusive TikTok material for the TikTokers. So I can just, because obviously that just be a lot of work, right? Like I want to focus on stand-up material and sketches and everything else. Like, you know, you don't want to be overload yourself. Well, it's just funny, just me talking like TikTok is work.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious because, you know, you talk about sketches and you're kind of seeing more and more on that platform. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different way. Have you consumed some of the Newfoundland content that's been going on there at all?
I guess not. Not on TikTok, because I'm not on TikTok like a typical
consuming
TikToker, just because I'm on a screen a lot throughout the day. So I try not to get swallowed into that, because, you know, hours go by and you're like, fuck, where'd the time go, right? I'm always super wary of that. So I guess I haven't. Not that I can think of. I know Lord Cord is one.
Well, it was funny. I did an episode with her on my other podcast, and I remember her. Now, I could be wrong, but I remember her actually chatting about how she was a big fan of the Outhouse videos when like you guys started like coming out. So she said it was cool to do all that, right? But yeah, no, I was just more or less curious, because obviously I feel like when you were growing up too, I guess there was a little point in time where, was Vine relevant for you at all?
Yeah, Vine was right. I had Vine for a little bit. I was stupid on Vine, man. I was it's bad. But yeah, Vine was relative. Yeah, what was it, like 15-second videos? That was
Yeah, that was the cap.
yeah, that was, yeah.
15 seconds. No, this is more so me geeking out right now over my like degree, obviously in communications, and currently studying like digital media. So I've just been kind of curious with how somebody like yourself kind of sees like different platforms and stuff like that. And you
Okay.
know, what's interesting now too is there's new platforms coming up nowadays. I don't know. Have you heard of Clubhouse?
Is that the one where it's just audio and then people
Mhm.
can? Yeah, my friend told me about that just the other day, actually.
Mhm.
But still not real. Still didn't really get it. It's like you can have like a live, say a live podcast, and a bunch of people can join in, but can interact or something.
Pretty much. I think that's been my go-to when describing it to people is kind of like an interactive podcast, right? But I just kind of see it in terms of a comedian standpoint where, Friday night you could have, say, I mean, obviously, so they're in like, I guess, whatever beta testing or like entry level. So it's only for iPhone users right now, and you need to be invited to join the app. So like there's still like a little bit of like exclusivity there. But what I see for comedians is almost, you take yourself, say Hako and any other comedians that you've kind of like worked with or done skits, but you could do almost a virtual event on that where you guys have the stage, like you set up your stage and you push it out and it's just 7 p.m. virtual show, and you just kind of go through a comedic stand audio only kind of thing, right? Which is a potential possibility there. I'm not sure. I'm curious with your profession what your thoughts are on something like that.
That sounds fucking terrible.
Yeah.
No,
Eh?
no, there's if I were to use that, I don't know, like audio only,
Hmm.
um, for like a show. Uh, I mean, just that aspect of it, I don't know, be appealing, but like I would be interested in terms of podcasting.
Yeah.
Sense maybe, but like, could you now with the interaction? Is it like just accept an invite only? Can you like take a caller or something like that?
Yeah, well, the people in the lobby, you can pose questions and stuff like that, and people can raise their hands, and you can call them up on stage, and they can ask you questions and whatnot. It's almost like a
Okay.
classroom too, in a way.
And I guess it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like a studio, like a switchboard, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, they have. I mean, there's been some big ones. Most notably, like Elon Musk went on the other day to chat and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like it in a way. It's nice. One thing that's annoying though is like I haven't turned my notifications off for that app yet, so it'll be like I'll get like a little banner like XYZ started the room, and then you'll accidentally click on it, and now you're in a conversation with a stranger that you didn't mean to be into because you're the only other person in the room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're just like, "How's it going, Robert?" And you're like, "Shit, not bad, boy. What are you up to?"
Yeah, you gotta talk to him now. How's
Yeah,
everything, boy? Now you're coaching this guy through life.
yeah. No, so yeah, I mean, I was just kind of curious in the sense. Do you think there's like in terms of yourself and your career, like obviously you probably want to stay on stage for as long as possible, but what's the future almost look like for Mike Lynch?
Just just hoping I get better at stand up and keep doing stand up comedy, as well as sketch. Basically, just if I can keep doing the same thing, maintain a comfortable living. Um, that's the goal, really. Like the big feeling you're chasing is coming up with a new idea of your own and hear a bunch of people react to it. Like that's the buzz. Um, and if obviously you want to make money, so you keep doing that for a living, so you can spend more time doing that. So as long as I can keep doing that and you know have a nice bit of freedom to just do my own ideas, and I'm laughing. I don't care what network picks me up, or if I'm just on TikTok making TikTok videos, good enough for me.
Hey, we're gonna see Cecil O'Brien renegading on TikTok after this call.
Yeah, it'll be all thanks to Robert.
Hey, I'll be coming for my 15% off of any brand deals on TikTok from here on out.
Listen,
Now,
you're getting 10%. Don't be greedy.
10.
You get a shout out in my clubhouse. That's it.
That's funny too. Shout outs and stuff like that. I don't think people realize. I don't know, and feel free to disagree with me on this, but I feel the hype that comes with a shout out is definitely overrated.
Yeah, like if I shouted, if I were to shout out you, like shout out Robert, like, like is a bunch of people gonna follow you? Like, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, like I just feel like there's like people think that a shout out's gonna, very much like increase them to that level of to the platform that they want to be at.
Yeah, like, or sometimes they just want to shout out just for that little buzz, like, like when they call out your birthday on the NTV birthday reel, like just
Yeah. Well, that's
you said my name.
That's a little bit that's a little bit different than kind of like what I'm talking about, because more or less like I'm looking like exclusively like, oh, like, tag me in your story, like shout out, me and stuff like that. 'Cause when people are almost looking for like, yeah, this is going to take my platform to here kind of thing,
Yeah, like I think it still has to be. Yeah, you'll get like maybe a few followers out of it, but it's still got to be something they want to see. Like you can't just be like, oh, say you got a little doily company or something, and I'm just sharing a picture of your. Now doilies are pretty dope. I shouldn't use doilies as an example, but something that nobody gave a fuck about, but you wanted people to give a fuck about. Like,
yeah. Well, it's gotta be relative, more or less, is how it goes, right? I mean, I've seen well, like I've worked with some YouTubers in the past and stuff like that, and I'm pretty good in terms of like, okay, you need a pool, yeah, I can find you a pool, right? And then they'll be in the video, and they'll be like, oh, like, hey, thanks to Robert for getting us this pool, guys, go show him some love. And like, it'll be a video that gets like 8 million views, but the translation is maybe like 3 or 4 people that kind of stop by to say, hey, thanks for setting them up with a pool, and then they just go right.
thanks,
Now
Robert. Yeah.
who knows, maybe I just might not be that entertaining.
I did hear of a scenario. Are you familiar with Matt Shea?
Not
He's
really.
like a gamer. He's a YouTube gamer from home.
Okay.
And he does, like, he's a YouTuber. Like, he makes a living off this shit. He plays games. He reacts to it. He, like, he's I guess he's basically doing like funny commentary while he's gaming and stuff on different games or whatever.
I think I stumbled across. Yeah, I stumbled across. I just took a quick look at his. I stumbled across it once upon a time, but yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
So yeah, like I think PewDiePie this is what I heard from Hako. Like, he got most of his following because PewDiePie was playing or whatever, and he was just like, oh, Matt Shea just signed in or something. Like, just give a really quick, vague mention of his name, and then his following did. But now PewDiePie is a totally different scale, right? Like he's.
They also, I would say too, PewDiePie with his gaming, and then Matt Shea also with his gaming. It's a similar realm of expertise, right? Or fields, content.
Yeah, but getting the pool guy, Robert, I don't know. No one gives a fuck about that guy.
No, not at all. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is too, is I just kind of, it was more of a summer job, right? I've always been.
No, you actually did this?
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were just showing an example. Oh, I feel like an asshole now. That's hilarious. No one gives a fuck about you. The real version.
But it was a valid point because nobody did.
I care about you.
I appreciate that. Well, you know what? I'm gonna try and sell you on something now. Let me open for you one of these days.
Okay, do you do comedy?
Not really, but I think I'm pretty funny. I think I'm decently funny.
Okay. Well, I mean, I gotta say yes now because I'm an asshole. Just to redeem myself from my But are you gonna do stand up?
It's one of those. So I'm somebody with a lot of different interests, right? Like I like kind of exploring it and getting out of my comfort zone. And I think one constant for myself is that it always comes down to entertaining people in some way, right? Like trying to bring joy to people, whether that would be with like piecing together a video or a podcast episode. Like I guess to when I look at the pillars of everything that I do, it all kind of comes back into I want to make people feel good and entertain in some kind of way, right? And obviously you can do that with comedy. So it's definitely something that has always piqued my interest because I think there's just something in with a live audience, there's just no escaping, right? So I think, when I'm hosting TV shows or, podcast episodes or, putting together things on like social media, at the end of the day, I have this safety net of not being instantly confronted by the people who I put this out to, right? So it's something that I would very much like to see how I would face where it's like, hey, they're front and center. There's no escaping the crowd right now.
Yeah, like worst case scenario, it could almost be like an exercise
Hmm.
for you to kind of get a gauge on, okay, what's my voice on, podcasting, interviewing, and whatever else you're at.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
it's always good to get out of your comfort zone too. To just say, look, I tried this one time. What a laugh.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I think at the end of the day, if you're comfortable, you're not growing, right? So,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, but I don't know. There's probably a lot of my old teachers and my parents would probably say I'm not funny. I think I'm a lot funnier than what I probably am.
Yeah, well, there's only one way to find out.
Yeah, for sure. So what's coming up for you guys? I mean, obviously, you got to kind of mitigate this whole alert level 5 thing and the
Well,
situation.
we postpone our show, so hoping that's gonna come back, so I can, you know, go shine in Springdale and finish the rest of our dates. But in terms of what's next, we're hoping to get our Best Con comedy tour back up and running, and just a lot more sketches, obviously, with all this going on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's
And,
the can you give us some insight on the next sketch that you think is in the books?
oh, giving away me secrets.
Yeah, that's
Um,
classified info.
just some Outhouse sketches. Just some characters. I'm gonna fool around with some of my own stuff on Instagram and TikTok and all that. So we'll let it be a surprise.
It sounds good. I mean, are we gonna say hello to Cecil at all? Should we say hello to him?
But I think he's in bed now. Hold on, huh? Hello, boys. How you doing? It's a painting
Hey,
by Tyrone. Speaking of shout outs, Tyrone Elliott, my dad, I think his name's Tyrone Elliott. Yeah, Tyrone Elliott. He painted this and posted it on Instagram, and my dad went and hunted it down. I was like, "Oh, wants to buy that?" And then when I came home to my room, there's just this painting of me.
that must be pretty cool, eh? Like your work has inspired other, Newfoundland artists and creators in a way. I mean, obviously, like the painting, you were a guy that I really wanted to, get the opportunity to chat with because I think you've done a lot of good for the comedy scene in the province. Like that must be pretty fun.
Yeah, man, it's super cool. I mean, and just even artwork that I really like, which is, yeah, it's cool when you influence. And especially when I was in Alberta, like, I wasn't running into people that knew me from videos. Like, I know there's a lot of Newfoundlanders in Alberta, but, going around the open mic scene, you're on White Ave, which is a bit of a hipster community. Like, there's no Newfies there. So then you come home and you're just like, holy fuck, people actually like this shit.
Mm.
And it's, yeah, it's awesome.
I think this was in the podcast I did with Brent, and this kind of killed me. He said that so we were talking about Omegle videos and how they've kind of taken off, and one of those trends has been like asking people what they think of an individual, and they'd be like, "Oh, I hate that guy," and then he would hop into the screen. But Brent was telling me you were in Toronto at one point, going around asking people what they thought of yourself, disguised as well, like you, right? And then you'd unveil and be like, "Oh, well, you just met him," and people would just be like, "What?"
Yeah. Like I'd ask people who didn't even know who I was, and then I'd unveil myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun little skit. That was us promoting our first tour, actually. First tour. That was when that was a tour I kind of realized how many Newfoundlanders were in Alberta.
What's been some of the best behind the scenes road stories?
Behind the scene road stories. Oh God, I should have had one. I should have had one prepared for you. There's just so many. It's funny, like this is one of those things, like there is some, but it's like off the top. It's like you look back in the bank and like, oh shit, I guess there's zero. I mean, this one off the top of the head is like these ladies brought us back to their place after after show in Fort Mac one time, and we were just getting drunk, and she was just taking our pictures. She had like this photo studio just in her living room, and anyway, she was talking like, we're like, oh, who owns a truck? It's like, oh, my husband. And we're like, your husband? Like, what the fuck? It's like, does he live here? Yeah. And like, yeah, he should be home in like 5 or 10 minutes. And here it was like 4:30 in the morning, and like her husband was about to come home and just see like 4 fucking hairy ass men just like drinking and getting a photo shoot done in her living room. And then so we hopped in her husband's truck. She drove us home in her husband's truck. And we just almost dodged getting our asses kicked by some fucking rig pig in Fort Mac. Now is that the best road story? No, it's not. But that's the best you're getting on lack of preparation. Fuck. I wish I thought of something better.
No, I mean it's one of those things where you're very much living in the moment, right? And I mean, I'll talk a little bit in the sense of being on the road with sports teams and stuff like that. And if you ask me what's some of the best stories on the road, I'd probably blank too, because you live it and you're taking it in, and like unless somebody in that group mentions something that kind of sparks that memory, you're like,
yeah, exactly.
oh,
it's like asking, what's your favorite comedian? What's your favorite this thing?
Are you throwing shade at some of the questions I've asked this evening here?
Yes, take the hint. No, not at all. I don't think you asked that. What's your favorite?
Well, I asked who inspired you.
That's not the same.
Okay, all
That's
right.
inspiration. No, you got great questions. You got great questions.
I appreciate it. Well, you know what? I mean, I kind of don't want this to end because I lockdown and stuff like that. I don't get to talk to many people, right? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of laughs, and
we can just leave each other on, and we'll just live our lives. Just leave this
like
little window to each other's life.
See, the unfortunate thing is, and I hate to admit I'm cheating on you, but I unfortunately I got to do a lot of these. So
tonight.
I did one earlier today, but I mean another one comes up tomorrow and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
so it's you gotta hang up to get the other call going. So
ouch, goddamn.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm getting dumped. What the fuck, Robert?
I hate doing this to you so early into the.
You say that to all the guests.
Hey, you know what? I will say though, there's been no guest that has made me laugh this much, if that's anything to you.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, now I'm just trying to
not on this, but
I'm just trying to degrade the compliment. I was like I talked to a lot of athletes and stuff like that, so it's a lot of mindset and sport and stuff. And actually, funny enough, and it this is kind of connecting into the sense of a small world, but The podcast I recorded this morning was with James Boyd, who's the general manager of the Ottawa 67s. So I got to know him through, working in Ottawa and whatnot. But the reason why we reconnected this week is because I ended up chatting with Dan Cleary, right? So Dan played
sick.
in him and Dan played in Belleville back when like Cleary was playing junior, right? So and he's got stories with Terry Ryan as well, like knowing Terry. So it's funny how we talk about for yourself Newfoundlanders showing up in Alberta and everywhere. Like we're very well connected and things like that. And you'll be surprised with how many people you run into that know a Newfoundlander like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is crazy like that. Like the connect when you look back on, you know, opportunities that arose just because you knew someone that knew someone. It's just like, was this planned? Like, it's just so fluky that, I am where I am. It's just so fluky that I'm here in my parents' house, getting the privilege to live with my parents at 28 years old. No, but yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean it is like the thing is with stuff like this, and I'm kind of speaking through my own experience and kind of seeing, some of the similarities that we've had in our career, but it's one of those things where this is something that I've always wanted to do, right? And you kind of have fun doing it, and to take a step back and look at it, and it was like, man, like at one point in time, I was just like a kid who said I wanted to do this, and I was, covering senior hockey in Newfoundland, and being in a rink of like 600 people, and now I'm playing a part in the Panda game, which is a massive Canadian football rivalry game that has 24,000 people come out to it, right? And you're like,
Unreal.
holy smokes! Like I grew up in a town of 6,000. Like, what is this, right?
That's amazing.
I think we're lucky enough where we get that unique perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just being where we're from, right? I must say. But hey, I know you're a busy guy, and all good things must come to an end. So that's all I got for you. I always like to give my guests the opportunity to kind of chat about anything that they want to talk about. If there's anything you got coming up or anything you want to say, I mean, by all means, the show is yours.
No, just keep watching the Outhouse. Keep listening to the SBI podcast. Most importantly, and what kind of are you just using the camera on your laptop or what?
No, I'm hooked up with my 1DX Mark II, the Canon thing. So I have a HDMI cord going in, so I'm streaming through my DSLR.
Yeah, I got a Mark II as well. Like, I'm wondering if I could. What do you use an HDMI cord?
Yeah,
This is how I'm ending your show, by the way. Shit, I could have asked you later.
Well, the shit you could have also, funny enough, we could have asked at the beginning and set you up with a nice quality recording for the listeners for the last.
Fuck.
We're gonna get some comments now and being like, yeah, great episode, but I watched all the way to the end and found out that we could have done it better for us, and they just didn't.
Yeah, you got wish.com, Mike Lynch.
No, yeah, I mean, I just I kind of got my setup, and I got some lighting equipment here too, and like I was saying beforehand, before we started recording, I want to kind of plan and build on what's going on behind me here, but eventually kind of get to the point where there's a rented studio and a space where you can have people face to face and cheers a beer or something like that at the beginning, which is almost sounds foreign at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to get a sick mic and shit. I want to do all that stuff too. Yeah, so maybe I'll have you on a guest on my podcast one day.
I was curious. I'm like, with your questions, is that something that could be in the works?
Yeah, like I just mostly want to just talk shit once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it becomes a big thing, but yeah, I think that's gonna be in the works. Just because I really wanna just flex that muscle of just your busy lives. You don't really get, especially during all this, you don't get to have the opportunity just to have a chat with somebody for an hour or so, right? So even just for that.
Well, hey, now let's I mean, that's something for our listeners to look forward to. All I'll say is, listen, I call this Newfoundland's #1 podcast, and I plan on keeping it that way. So you can back right up there. All right.
I can be number 2.
No, I'm kidding. Of course, there's. Yeah, I mean, I just like to be. It's so funny. I'm so internally competitive. I don't know if you kind of had the same thing, but I'm like battling in my head sometimes where I'm just like, I remember running the Tele 10 one year, and mind you, I'm not like, it took me a while to get that thing done. And I remember I was like, I'll say running, but realistically, I was crawling. Like my toe was bloody, the sock was I was crawling to that finish line. I barely
Yes,
trained
fun.
for it. And
Good for you.
I just remember like, yeah, I'm moving like a snail at this point, and I'm like passing this like 75-year-old grandmother who's like on the same pace as me, and I'm like, yeah, that's right, like I'm beating you and I'm getting to the finish line before you are. And like I'm like, here I am, like, I'm like 17, 18 years or however old I was. I think I was like 19 maybe or 20, and she's at the same pace as me, and I'm just like struggling to get her done. But I'm in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm competitive. It's like, yeah, you're not beating me today. And here it's like, man, like you should have been past her miles ago. What are you even talking about?
Yeah. Sometimes you're just competing with yourself and a 75-year-old, and just keep bettering yourself.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
I'm kind of like I'm like a bit competitive, but like you said, it's mostly with myself, just making the next thing that I did better. You
yeah,
know?
that's always like that's kind of where I'm at a lot of the times too. Like I said, like sometimes it's like more or less like I'll never even let it kind of portray, but I'm always in my head being like, how can I be the best that I possibly can be, right? And that's like with all like competition and stuff like that, right? It just I think it's something that keeps you going at the end of the day.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you have a week, or like you drank 4 nights in a row. All right, next week I'm only gonna drink 3 nights in a row. Like, just baby steps. Just focus on yourself. That's our advice. That's the theme of this podcast.
We're turning it into a self motivation one. I mean, we can go for another hour here and record our best motivational sayings.
Yeah, me and you start a body break. I'll be Joanne McLeod.
I think I'm a little too young to remember the names, but I remember that commercial coming on like in the background. Do you have you got the suits for us though? I feel like that's got to be something if we're gonna
I
start
got
a
a couple
body break.
windbreakers for us. Yeah,
Yeah.
sports
Okay.
bra. Got all that. Body break.
So what are we gonna call it? Robin Mike's body break?
Rob and Mike, stop being a piece of shit and get off the couch. Break. It's probably it. That's probably the best we got. But it's gonna be good. I'd say there's probably like do you find that there's like any theme podcast now has been thought of kind of thing? I mean, obviously podcasts are good because it's always going to be your own because you're your only
Mhm.
self. But like,
Well, so it's funny that you mentioned that because I obviously like I'm still a master's student studying at Ryerson, and we had this course last semester where the professor kind of brought in the analytics and the numbers. I think, man, I'm gonna butcher this, but it was like for every 25 YouTube videos and like 120 blog posts, there's one podcast, right? Which is pretty astronomical. Something like that. I don't know. I definitely screwed up that statistic. Obviously, online schooling, I wasn't paying attention very well, but um there's this whole concept though where like nothing is original anymore, which is fairly true, right? Like you kind of you don't want to copy anybody, but everything's been done. Like I it's more or less like how you have to go about things now is kind of, has this been done before? Which for the most part it has, and it's like, okay, how can I make this better, right? So in terms of like podcast themes, I mean, for a big reason why I wanted to start this one was because I didn't really think that there was much in the Newfoundland space for this, right? Now mind you, There could be some that I'm not aware of, and that's just
Yeah, there's not many that's kind of dedicated to Newfoundland, I guess you can say. Like Terry Ryan has one.
yeah. So, but even for Terry, for example, that's more so on his like career and who he's played with, right? So that's not
Yeah.
necessarily like it's Newfoundland based, but it's uh not Newfoundland based, but it's Newfoundland because Terry Ryan's obviously a Newfoundlander kind of thing, right? So
Yeah, that's not the angle. Like I'm gonna focus on Newfoundland on its own. So
mhm.
yeah, no, that's great.
You know what? I'll save the listeners from hearing us talk business and talk shop there now, and we'll end her all off to end their pain, and then we can chat more business and
Painful,
podcast
painful.
stuff after. Hey man,
That's how this has been painful.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, and like I said, I just sometimes man, who knows? I love this stuff, and I'm saying this because I know I could talk about this for easily 2-3 hours, and the next thing you know, I'm sitting here with a 4 hour recording, and I'm like, I will never have the heart to like cut all of this because I just like it so much, and then people are listening, being like, man, like, why are they talking about building a podcast? I wanted to come here and
I
laugh.
know, right? I know that's the thing. It's like you end up talking about like say like, oh, what kind of camera you use? No one gives a fuck about that.
Yeah. So hey, to the people who have stayed this long, we appreciate you 100%.
Yes, thank you. Don't unfollow me, please. Please.
Hey, Mike, I really want to say like, thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for, everything you've done. Like I said, like, it didn't happen often where, my mainlander friends and people from Toronto and Ottawa would come to me with stuff from back home. They'd always kind of more so tormenting me, being like, "Oh, it's all foolishness, like Newfoundland, whatever," kind of thing. But a lot of your stuff in the Outhouse content and whatnot, it's got that reach to get people interested in the island and engage and talk. And I've seen that dialect firsthand. So I mean, I want to thank you for that as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you very much. It means a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll stay in touch for sure. But hey, it's been great, and I'll catch you later.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Take care.
All right, that's it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed that little chat with Mike Lynch. Do me a favor, make sure to share this with a friend, leave us a review, and hey, in the meantime, stay best kind.